probably the best place for us to get started is I could try to summarize your biography and just make a mess of it. By the time I got to the end of it, you'd just be glaring at me. That's not who I am at all. So if you would give esteemed audience kind of an overview of your background.
Okay, so I was born in Hawaii, and my mother named me Anne after Anne of Green Gables. And last year, I became a permanent resident of Canada. I'm not in Prince Edward Island, but I don't live too far away. I'm on the East Coast, coast-ish in Ontario. I grew up in Hawaii with a few years in California, and then I went to university in Texas and stayed there for decades until I came up here. I have been a teacher, fourth grade teacher, a reading teacher. I co-owned a children's bookstore, and I was a university lecturer of pre-service teachers. And I love to read, and I love to write. My two most favorite things to do.
Then you've chosen a wise career. You get to do lots of those things. I've got so many questions for you, but right away, Ontario, Canada, that's a big move. You've lived a little bit all over, I know, but what takes you to Ontario? And also, what's the process for anyone? I know that my wife and I have occasionally mentioned it when viewing the news that maybe it's time to look into immigrating to Canada. How much work is involved to getting there to Canada?
Well, I'm here because a few years ago, almost 2 years ago, I married my college sweetheart. And he lived in Canada. We met at the University of Texas and decided it wasn't a relationship that we wanted to continue. So we went our separate ways. Unfortunately, he lost his wife to cancer a few years ago, and he made a trip back to Texas, and a group of college friends got together and kind of went from there. So here I am. I came as a spousal sponsored immigrant, and the process took us from start to finish maybe a year or so. There's a lot of paperwork involved, and it's quite complex, but probably for good reason. But I'm thrilled to be at this point in the process, and happy to be here.
Just what I'm hearing you say is my wife and I need to divorce immediately and find Canadians that we can marry, and then after a few years, maybe divorce them and remarry each other. Who knows?
I don't know.
What's got so many questions about your background and reading and writing, because you've done just about a little bit of everything. So let's start just with the fact that you've got 4 different degrees, one of which was a Master of Fine Arts from Vermont.
Yes.
So what have each of those degrees and that level of higher education contributed to your writing, and specifically how did that MFA program benefit your writing?
Well, I love school. So I just kept going back and back for more degrees because I find learning, exciting and a thrill. So my first degree was in education, and then I did teach for 5 years. And when I got that degree, one of the classes I taught took was children's literature. And I was an avid reader as a child. And then high school, I dropped off reading a little bit. I was doing mostly schoolwork and related reading. But then in college, I fell in love with children's literature all over again. So that was, one of the highlights. And then I transferred that into the classroom where I read aloud to my students, every day. And reading was at the forefront of, everything that I taught. Then I decided, well, maybe I didn't want to teach forever. So What do I love most? Books. What degree could I get? Oh, how about a master's in library and information science? So I went through that program. And then as I was going through it, I thought, well, maybe I don't want to be in a school setting. Maybe I'll go the public library route. So that was my focus and intent until I got into school and realized, well, I need some money to help me pay tuition. And I got a job at an independent children's bookstore in town and absolutely loved it. And when I graduated, the two owners said, well, rather than get a library job, would you be interested in working in the store full time? And I don't know where I got the idea to come up with the answer, but I said, well, actually, I'd like to be a part of the store. And if we could make that happen, I'd be interested. And so we worked it out. And I was with the store for like 13 wonderful years.
So wait, they offered you a full-time position and your response
Yes.
was, I want to be an owner?
Yes.
That's fantastic. You must be a savvy negotiator.
No, I don't. It just came out. I wasn't dreaming of that. I didn't have a secret, desire, but obviously I did. It just, as soon as they said that, I went, oh, well, how about?
If I ever have another contract to negotiate, or when I have another contract to negotiate, I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, Anne, how could this be 10 times better? And I know that you'll have a solution. That's excellent.
Well, people tell me that I look normal, but but actually I'm a huge risk taker. Like moving up to Canada, doing things like getting involved in the bookstore. So I was single, and I thought, well, bookstores aren't extraordinarily profitable. And I wasn't sure that I could do that job for the rest of my life as much as I loved it. And so I thought, well, maybe if I go back to school and get another degree.
You didn't want to fall back on the two that you already had?
Right. No. So I pursued a literacy degree at the university with the aim of getting a PhD. And my focus was around literature, but not just solely children's literature. And when I graduated, I wasn't planning to teach, but I thought about like the world around us and the bookstore, I would say beginning of the end of independent bookstores in many respects, because big box stores and the internet was starting to rise. And I thought, well, as much as I loved the store, maybe it's time to leave and to pursue, other avenues. So
were you kind of like the Meg Ryan character and You've Got Mail and that kind of a position?
Exactly. Only at the time I didn't have Tom Hanks.
No, he was in Canada.
That came later, years later, but that's okay. Yeah, exactly. So then, as it turned out, I was able to work as an adjunct at the university. And one of the benefits to that, aside from being in the university community, which I just loved, and teaching, which I love, I had more time to devote to writing, because, as you, I'm sure, are aware, small businesses require a lot of hours. And the store was my life in many respects, and teaching, while did consume many hours, I also had some more free time and extra where I could try and do my best to write.
When did it occur to you that all this being surrounded by books, all this love of reading, all this love of children's literature, that will lead me to become a children's book author? When was that a formal declaration of intent?
I always, well, I'd say from junior high on, I wanted to write. I'd never met an author. I didn't know you could be one. I know that sounds odd, but I just didn't. And I think it was in college when I took that children's literature class where I thought, oh, wait, this is a real person who wrote this book and told a great story or gave great information, and maybe someday I could do that. So I had the desire and the dream, but I've come to writing as a reader, not as a, English major, writer, journalist. And so I really didn't have a clue as to what to do.